Hey there. So this is the second circuit jam I'm recording and putting up on YouTube. And this one I had a little idea for like a bass groove in my head. I had a tempo in mind, so I tapped it out here. I usually tap the tempo, even if I feel like I know what number it should be. I don't know, it feels more natural. Little metronome, chromatic keyboard. Just take kind of default bass and try to get the idea that I had in my head in here as close as I can. So this one, it was a ba-ba-da-da-da. That was kind of the whole thing I was trying to do. Sounds so simple when you say it out loud. So I got the idea. Sounds like 2 bars. I'm not that great at judging bars. For a guy who's been playing as long as I am, you'd think I'd be better at that, but I always just kind of guess rather than sitting there working it out. I'm thinking this is going to be a tough one to record live, but I also don't really know exactly how to step it out in 16 notes, so I'm going to try it here. Not too bad. There's some kind of weird portamento there, but I think I can fix that by messing with the sound. Just finding a different sound. Right there sounds less sustained. Sounds better. And again, this is kind of that explorational aspect of the circuit is, you find a sound that sounds interesting, a bass sound, one of the presets, and then these knobs can really get pretty outrageous, how different each of the presets can sound. And then of course there's multiple patch libraries available from Novation that you can load in, and also ones that guys online have done. I didn't really mess with those too much, the individually developed ones, but I had a circuit one or a Novation one loaded in there. It was pretty cool. So that metronome's getting a little boring, so let's try to put in a little funkier beat here. Again, I'm using Terakith's sample pack on the drums, 64 drum sounds that he graciously uploaded for free to the circuit user group on Facebook. It's a nice, usable set of sounds. It didn't seem to come with I don't even know what they call it, but like a library thing or something for the circuit. It was just a bunch of wave files. So I loaded each one in using the circuit software. It took 5 minutes, wasn't hard. Just went bass drum, snare drum, cymbals, and I think percussion. Each one, he's got 16 examples basically. And they're all nice and usable kind of drum sounds. Some more acoustic-y, some more hip-hop-y, some more electronic. Nothing outrageous. A lot of the couple of Novation packs that I sample with drums, some of the pads, at best you could use them on one song. They're just, distinctive and odd. Not to say they're not necessarily cool, but, just not very utilitarian. Don't have a wide range of applications. That's what he's done a nice job with here, is coming up with a 64 sounds that are all pretty widely applicable. I guess the trade-off is that you don't get nearly the variety. I mean, you've got a bunch of not that different bass drums. There's some variety. It's a nice. I'm not taking anything away from it. Talking about it, right? I think this one came out a little better visuals wise. I messed around with it in DaVinci Resolve, which is what I'm using for my editing. I'm trying to learn that as well. Messed around with the settings in there some. I'm shooting this with the E4K. It's kind of a GoPro knockoff. Pretty cool little camera for the money, but I don't know if it's the best for this kind of application. It seems to have trouble focusing in really well on the details on the circuit. For instance, the buttons are a little blurry. Not the end of the world. Overall, I think it looks pretty good. Doing this thing, layering two really drum loops that could stand alone, sort of a hip-hoppy way, I think, of approaching it, where you maybe find a couple different drum samples and mix them together to come up with a final result. Here, obviously, I'm recording two loops and layering them, but something I've been messing around with, so it's a cool sound, kind of, get some polyrhythms going and that kind of stuff. One problem with this sample flipping technique on the drums that I'm doing here, where I'm changing the drum sound essentially, theoretically with every pad press, changing the sample on that track, which allows you to pack a lot more drum action into your circuit track. The one downside is it's difficult to edit and step, and changing the drums, for instance, the patches for each particular drum sound, very difficult, really tedious, if possible, really at all. It's a pain. So it's kind of important to find samples you're reasonably satisfied with when you record these parts. Otherwise, if you really don't like what you've got, you're probably going to have to re-record it. Somewhere online I saw someone saying that the pads are not velocity sensitive. I feel like they are velocity sensitive, and I'm not sure if I'm imagining it or if whoever that was mistaken, or maybe they changed it in a firmware update after he made that comment. Something I keep meaning to test. And since you've got the velocity, editor, step editor, you should be able to see pretty easily if it's recording it or not. I gotta remember to do that. It certainly feels like they're velocity sensitive. And it's also entirely possible I'm just imagining it. Here, doing really the same thing with the simples that I did with the cymbals that I did with the bass and snare, right? Where this is not a natural thing. A single drummer couldn't play those 16th notes on the ride cymbal and be playing this hi-hat part. Maybe Buddy Rich could, but most human drummers couldn't. So it's almost like taking two different, tracks and mixing them together. groovy little beat. I like it. Still no second synth track. It's got that bass line going. I really wanted to work on the rhythm. This is really a groove-based track here. It's not so much about the melody or harmony, at least up to this point. Working something out. I don't know. Sometimes you just have to mess around, and that's really what improvisation is all about. It's about listening and listening to the, reacting to what you hear really quickly, essentially, or as quickly as you can, Really great improvisers are the guys who react almost immediately, almost before they hear it even. They anticipate what they're going to hear. Guys like that, I think, really like playing with people who surprise them and where their anticipations are wrong. And again, that's like kind of a fun thing to do with the circuit, is just to improvise with yourself a little bit. Improvise with the machine, it's you, yourself and the machine really here, and it's got really all the tools to just make it pretty quick to just sit down and knock out a little thing. And I don't love everything I do on here, and to be honest, I don't know that any of it really will ever go beyond being inside this box, I guess, and on YouTube for my ones of viewers, but it's a good little musical workout for your brain, and it's nice to relax. I keep this thing handy in my living room, and I get home from work or whatever, and I'm feeling a little drained, and after I've had a little chance to sit and relax and have a drink, maybe I'll grab this thing and just sit there for 15 minutes, and it's almost like a form of meditation. Whoops. Hit a lot of weird notes on that step. And so this is cool. I record this part live, but I kind of screwed it up. And the step editor is a little hard to get the hang of at the very first. But once you understand how it goes, like really like everything on the circuit, it's just they really embrace this grid thing. This grid system and these colored, these RGB LEDs, and come up with, an interface that ends up being, quite intuitive for having, no text feedback or very little numeric feedback whatsoever. Like tempo and swing are the only numeric feedback items on the whole thing. I think it would actually be cool if they had some other options tied to numerical values. Here I had to just stop and figure out what the heck I was doing. I kind of don't like to stop it. I feel like I feel like it's cheating almost. But of course it's not cheating. There is no cheating. All's fair in improvisation, especially when you're improvising with yourself. There we go, I figured it out. Well, I guess that's one. I don't know if it's a downside of the grid system, but someone with a little more traditional musical background. I just have a little more traditional musical background. I'm no Mozart over here, but that took me a little longer, I think, to figure out than it would have on a more traditional, layout. Whether it be, more like digital audio workstations, you know, kind of player piano roll style, or musical, you know, staff, obviously. And yet, you know, I figured it out, and the more I mess around with this thing, the quicker it gets, you know, for me to figure out how to achieve what I want to achieve. So here on the same track, I recorded a harmony for my initial melody, right? Same patch, obviously, the same track. Now I'm looking for a better sound, and this is one place where the circuit falls a tiny bit short, and this is a quibble mostly. You can't tell which patches are monophonic and which are polyphonic. So here I've recorded a polyphonic part, and I would probably like to just hear the polyphonic patches with it. It would be nice if they were color-coded or something. On the other hand, it's certainly happened, and even here, some of these, I heard some interesting things. You know, sometimes the way the monophonic synths will play the parts that you played polyphonically just have some interesting, you know, we'll do a kind of an interesting transform on a part that you played, and you know, maybe you end up liking that better than what you played in the first place, or what you intended. And that's, again, I think what I really enjoy about working with the circuit is that discovery element. We got a lot of, you know, cool textures. You know, I think these synths, like, they sound a little thin compared to, you know, more expensive synthesizers or analog synthesizers. These are digital, and yet, like, you know, this pad here, you play around with the knobs a little bit, and it's got quite a bit of interesting texture. And you know, if you add like automation on these knobs, you can create a ton of texture, really. And it's so easy to automate everything on here. It's pretty cool what you can achieve sonically. Kind of a sci-fi sound with that pad, huh? I like that. So here I'm using a very short delay. So it's really more of a chorus kind of effect to just thicken the sound of the tracks that it's applied to up, rather than like I often do, where it's more of a rhythmic element. That's it.